guys, this is Mr. Brenton here, and we're going to try to do this video on respiration, types there are, and formula, of course, and then, of course, we want to look at the mitochondria as well. So let's get started. So respiration is the converting of energy in our food, the organic molecule of glucose, into a more usable form. We'll get into that usable form known as ATP in just a little bit. First thing I want to do though is talk about aerobic versus anaerobic. So we know that aerobic involves oxygen. Okay, so that's the key word there. And anaerobic, of course, is no oxygen. Okay, no oxygen there. So we're going to focus more on aerobic respiration and then get into a little bit of anaerobic. So let's go for aerobic first, and let's draw a mitochondria over here in this little blank space here. So try to draw what we have our structure of, and of course we have our folds inside here, so it kind of looks a little like this, okay, in our cells, if we looked at it under a very powerful microscope. So what goes in and what goes out? So it keeps hitting the side here, sorry about that. So basically we need to know this is aerobic respiration, so of course we're going to have oxygen have to enter our mitochondria, that's our O2, and we also need to have our glucose, so that's our C6H12O6, and that's our glucose. Okay, and then there are some specialized enzymes that are in these membranes of the mitochondria, so it's going to start breaking down this glucose here. And let me just make sure we have here. Okay, so we have our glucose, and then when the glucose gets broken down, we're going to have a couple things leave, like CO2 and water. And of course we have to have our change of our ADP conversion into ATP. Oops, so that should be an arrow here. So it should be ATP from ADP. So there's a conversion there. It's happening on the membranes of that mitochondria. So, and a lot of times we label this is basically where the energy is stored after the breakdown. Alright, so let's take a look at our formula of respiration, get that down. So our two reactants are glucose and oxygen. Okay, so the formula is C6H12O6 is glucose, this is needed. Oxygen is needed, so 6O2, and that is broken down. Glucose is broken down to carbon dioxide, CO2, and water, which is H2O, and then you wind up having 36 ATP molecules converted from ADP. Okay, now why is it the ATP now? That's our currency for energy for our cells. So this right here is basically what our cells use for all of their life functions. Okay, so if you take a look now, let's go scroll down a little bit here. Let's see if I can do that. Okay. Alright, so during respiration, we know energy from one glucose molecule is converted into 36 ATP molecules. So 36 ADP molecules are converted to 36 ATP molecules, and that's where the energy is now stored. Okay, so this thing is now cooperating. Okay, so what you need to know is ADP stands for adenosine diphosphate. So that's a adenosine molecule. It's basically an adenine with a ribose sugar, and you have two high energy bonds with phosphate. So you have two phosphate molecules attached to the adenosine. Oops. And then you need to know adenosine triphosphate. I'm sorry. Adenosine triphosphate is three phosphate molecules attached to an adenosine molecule, and that just kind of holds that in place. So now you have 3 high energy phosphate bonds. So the one thing you have to realize is that bonds, more energy. So bonds are basically where the energy is stored. Sorry about that. Some buttons that I should be hitting. So basically phosphates, the energy is stored in each of those phosphates when they're attached. So basically during respiration, an extra phosphate is attached to the molecule of ADP to make it ATP. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Alright, so what does this look like in a diagram? Well, we have respiration. Sorry about these extra lines here. I have a little technical problems. So respiration, so we have the ADP, that's already in the cell, and now we're going to add energy to it. So respiration is going to break glucose down, release the energy, but now that energy has to be captured into another molecule. So what happens is that an extra phosphate is attached to your ADP to make it ATP now. So now the cell has these extra ATPs. And a good way to think of this is glucose is a big molecule, lots of energy stored in it. You break that one molecule down, now all those little units of energy have to be captured into ATP. Then the cell needs to do things like life processes, muscle movements, synthesizing, making new enzymes, so whatever it is, all those life functions we talked about to maintain homeostasis, you need energy for. So, sorry about that, bouncing this around a little bit. Scroll down here. So what's going to happen is ATP now has to be broken down, or the phosphate has to be broken off of that, and then when that's broken down, ATP, one phosphate's broken off, and it's converted back to ADP, which is lower energy. So this is high energy, and this is lower energy. So you have to think about that. And that's high energy, and this is lower energy. Okay, so that energy now is released off of the ATP, and it breaks that phosphate off, and that's used for the cell processes. Okay, so let's scroll down just a little bit more. Okay, so that's aerobic respiration. Well, that's actually just every cell uses this process here, whether you do anaerobic or aerobic. So anaerobic, though, is without energy, or without oxygen. It's not as efficient, and it only produces 2 ATP. You might say, well, why do you do that? Well, these creatures live without oxygen. They live in environments without oxygen, so this is all they can perform, or they don't have the right enzymes to perform aerobic respiration. So they're left with anaerobic respiration, but they can survive. They're much more simple, so they can survive on less energy. So 2 types of anaerobic respiration are lactic acid fermentation, and anytime we talk about anaerobic, we're talking about fermentation. So lactic acid fermentation, animals perform this when oxygen is low, and they produce lactic acid as a waste product or a byproduct, and that's that substance that makes our muscles sore, and we don't feel good after we have that produced in our body. We're going to focus more on alcoholic fermentation. We're going to be doing our lab on this, our fermentation lab, and yeast can perform this. Yeast only do alcoholic fermentation, and alcohol is the waste product. And basically what you wind up with is you need some sort of sugar, in this case glucose, but it doesn't, oops, sorry about that. It doesn't have to be glucose. It could be a lot of different types of sugars, so we could just write sugar over here. But we are having a lot of technical difficulties tonight. We're just going to try to finish this video up. So basically glucose or sugar gets broken down into carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is a waste product, so you're going to get bubbles produced in your lab. So this is our gas. And alcohol is our byproduct here, and of course it gets the 2 ATP out of it. So there's anaerobic respiration, two forms, alcoholic and lactic acid fermentation. So we got to know aerobic versus anaerobic, you know the processes of these two, and you have to know your formulas and your waste products of each one. Okay, so we finished our video. Had a little technical difficulties, but I think we got it in, and let me know if there's any issues or problems following this, but we'll see what we did. We had to do this one late tonight, so alright, we'll see you tomorrow, hopefully, and hopefully I'll be awake, and alright, talk to you tomorrow.